Welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventures podcast here on Brownfield Ag News. I'm Brent Barnett. This week's show is brought to you by Beck's Hybrids. At Beck's, we are and will remain farmers at heart. This week on the show, we're talking about bird hunting. We're talking about pheasant hunting in the state of Iowa. With us now is Todd Bogenschutz with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. Todd, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us more as we get started, Todd, more about your role with Iowa DNR and some of the work that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So I'm the upland game biologist. So that means I'm responsible for pheasants and quail and cottontail, jackrabbit, Hungarian partridge, do a little work with our prairie chicken. So anything related to the upland, basically not in the forest. And we've got a waterfowl guy too. He does all the waterfowl stuff, so he handles that. So I'm kind of the guy that handles the upland stuff, and so do our roadside surveys, do our harvest, do any research kind of related to that. So yeah, so I'm pretty knowledgeable about the pheasant stuff that's going on in Iowa and how bird numbers are.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Can't wait to learn more about pheasant season here in Iowa. I know things have opened up. Before we get to that, curious, do you do any other type of hunting? Have you been out deer hunting at all? Because right now, as you and I talk, we're recording on November 1st, looking at the calendar here, and we've just had some perfect weather for some rut action to really build up. So I didn't know if you do any deer hunting, Todd.
Oh yeah, yep. I do some deer hunting. Matter of fact, the wife got her nicest buck early muzzleloader season, so that was pretty cool. And oh yeah, I love to deer hunt. I turkey hunt a lot too. I love to chase pheasants and quail, and waterfowl hunted quite a bit when I was younger. Haven't done much of it lately, but yeah, and I've gone out west and elk hunted and chased after mule deer. And so yeah, I guess I'm an addict.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I've lived here in Iowa since 2015, my family and I, and this was the first year that I ever tried the early muzzleloader season. That was kind of a little change of pace for me, and I've had a lot of good encounters. Saw more deer on public land this year than I have probably the last 4 or 5 years combined. Honestly, had one up close encounter with a kind of a smaller brush rack type buck and let him go and passed him, but I would really like to do that season again. It was a new experience, and it kind of changes the game a little bit when you've got a muzzleloader in your hand and not a bow.
Yeah, it does give you, an extra 50, 60 yards there over what most people do with a bow. So, but it's a good season for my wife. She doesn't like cold. She's not like diehard deer hunter or anything, but she doesn't mind going once or twice. And so, usually that season it's a little bit warmer. I mean, the rut's not really started, but you can have a little bit nosing around. And so, I think the biggest thing with the early muzz is, if it's really hot and warm, kind of like we had it, the deer kind of probably mornings are better than evenings, just because of temperatures and stuff. But yeah, it cooled down. And yeah, I actually she had a nice buck that walked by her, about a 150. And so by far her best deer. And so for only, sitting out in the tree once or twice a year, it's that's pretty good.
That's a dandy of a buck, man. That's awesome. I will say I'm here in Marion County, so there's a lot of public land where I'm at, especially all around the Lake Red Rock area, Todd. And I've been a little surprised up to this point, both early in the bow season and then during early muzzleloader. I haven't seen a lot of hunting pressure when I've been out on public land so far this year. Might just be, different times. Maybe people are waiting for the rut in November, but whenever I go to some of my usual places, I haven't dealt with a lot of hunting pressure this year. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think, it seems like with our bow hunters, I mean, you've got the really avid people that probably hunt regardless, but it seems like a lot of our bow hunters, they kind of wait for the rut. Now, I think just because there is more deer activity when, they start chasing does and stuff, they're more likely to be out, when you can see them. And I think this year too, we've had such a mild fall. I mean, obviously crop harvest went like crazy, was done early. I mean, just excellent conditions, warm and dry, but not really the conditions that were conducive to a lot of deer movement. So I think people were just, are just waiting. And now now that we finally had this rain and kind of made the woods quiet, and temperatures are kind of what I call more seasonal now. A little bit of frost this morning. So yeah, this morning probably was an awesome morning, but it's also good weather for chasing pheasants too. So
That's true. That's some good points you made there. I didn't really connect that at first and think about it, but there have been a lot of farmers across the state I've talked to for Brownfield for crop updates, and a lot of them hunt, on their own private land and have told me, I'd like to get out and go bow hunting, but we've had all these days consecutive with no rain delays that we had to get our crop out of the ground and we didn't have any delay, so we got to get to it. And so I completely understand that. But yeah, you mentioned pheasant hunting. The season is open now in the state. And so for people that live here and also non-residents, could you talk about just the history of pheasant hunting in Iowa, Todd? Has this always been a premier destination for pheasant hunting in the U.S.?
it pretty much has. Yeah. I mean, actually, we're starting our 100th year of pheasant hunting this coming fall into next year. Our first season was 1925. 3-day season was the first season in the state up in north central Iowa. And it was kind of spurred actually by just the sheer number of pheasants. There were some crop depredation complaints. That particular year, farmers just walking in their oat and hay fields picked up 60,000 wild eggs, and gave them to the Conservation Commission at that time to kind of help spread the birds to other counties. I mean, they give the eggs to local landowners and farmers, and they'd put them under their chickens, and try to hatch them out and release them. And they also got 7,000 wild hens for the commission back then to move to other areas of the county. So, and they were only introduced in Iowa around 1901. And so to become that abundant by 1925, they obviously, fit in well with Iowa's landscape then. Of course, it was a corn oat hay rotation back then. A lot of horse-drawn implements then, still hand-picked corn. It's a different landscape than what we think about today when we think about Iowa agriculture. But the way we were farming back then really, really suited pheasants well. And yeah, kind of us in South Dakota have always kind of been one or two, who wants the bragging rights. South Dakota's actually had it for the last number of years, but we've been the number 2 state probably for the last 3 years running again. We kind of had some really bad weather between 2000 and 2012, just consecutive bad years of a lot of rain and some pretty tough winters, which was kind of unusual for Iowa. Really took our population down, but since then the numbers have kind of rebounded, and kind of the word has gotten back out that we've got some birds again. And last year we shot an estimated almost 600,000 roosters, just a little bit shy of that, and had about 80,000 hunters. So it was a really, really good fall. Our counts this year, we're down a little bit. We had quite a bit of rain there in May and June, which is good. I mean, the state was in drought. And so, especially from the crop side of it, we definitely needed the rain. Of course, we got a little more than we wanted. If everybody remembers kind of the flooding that we had up there in Northwest Iowa, it's kind of unprecedented, 17 inches of rain or whatever it was. And so we had a lot of rain there in June. And of course, that coincided kind of with like the tail end of our hatch. And so I was really concerned, when we saw the images and stuff. Of course, that hit most of the northern half of the state. And, I thought our counts could be down 50% to have that kind of rain, especially when nests were coming off. But we were down. I mean, statewide, we were down 14%, but that was way better than what I was thinking was going to happen. So, so even being down a little bit, last year was such a good year that this year I think is going to be really good too. I'm estimating we're going to shoot probably around 400,000 roosters. I don't think we'll do the 600,000 with the counts being down a little bit, but crop harvest this fall was essentially done by the time the season opened last week, which, if we have an opener and say 50-60% of the crop's still standing, that does make pheasant hunting a little harder because the birds are more than willing to use those crop fields, and so, but when you have an opener when basically 90+ percent of the crop was out already, That usually bodes well for hunters just because, there isn't all the standing corn and beans that the birds can utilize. And so they're kind of in the grassy cover and wetlands that everybody kind of expects them to be in. So, yeah, based on what we've seen on our social media site there, on the opener and just kind of some anecdotal reports that have sprinkled into me this week, I think it was a pretty good opener. A lot of success. I mean, people were saying, yeah, probably not as many birds as last year, but everybody was moving birds. Got quite a few reports of people saying the birds were young, which doesn't surprise me. I think with all the rain we had in May and June, we had pheasants that lost their nest that re-nested. And so those later hatch birds are going to be kind of young, on the opener. And so had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reports of that. So doesn't surprise me, but yeah, I think overall the opener was good. The temperatures were, we'd been in that hot 70, 80 degree weather, and that's really hard on dogs and out of shape hunters going going out for the first time. So it was cool opening morning, light breeze. We had that rainfall, made sending conditions good for the dogs. And so I don't think we could have asked for a better opener weather-wise.
Yeah, I've had one encounter with a pheasant. He about gave me a heart attack here during early muzzleloader season. It was getting in the, far hours of the evening, kind of that, it's go time. You start feeling like a deer going to be moving. The sun's down. We're in the final half hour, and I was on the ground, and I was kind of sitting in some canary grass that was pretty tall, overlooking this creek bottom, and just behind me, I kept hearing something, and I'm thinking, well, is this a deer working towards me? I just can't see it in the brush line. And it got closer and closer and closer. And all of a sudden, I mean, you could hear a pin drop outside because there was no breeze whatsoever. And he just flushed out of there right next to me. And I about fell over sitting down. And it was just, they'll get you every time, especially if anybody that's listening that has, walked into the timber before daylight, you're going to your stand or you're going across CRP and you'll flush some out in the middle of the night. That'll scare you as well or get the heart going anyway. They know how
Yeah,
to get you rattled.
give you a big old cackle. Yep. I had the other day I was sitting in the stand and I'd seen as it got light, there does and some fawns had come through and then I heard a rooster crow and it kind of caught me a little bit because it was like kind of right on the edge of the timber, not where I'd normally expect roosters. There wasn't any CRP by or anything. And it cackled. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. A bird in the timber, not common for them, but I mean, you'll find them in the timber occasionally. Well, then out in the crop field there, I was looking at. Here I can see a rooster walking and a little bit of breeze, and his tail is kind of getting blown up. And I'm like, hey, that's a nice bird, had a long tail. And then, well, next thing here, this other rooster runs out of the timber and it kind of runs up to him. They do a little, jostling and, doing the showing off thing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, boys, you're about 6 months late for the breeding season, but hey, you guys knock yourself out.
Yeah. Hey, Todd, as we kind of wind down here, what advice would you give hunters that are maybe they pheasant hunted in the past when they were younger and then have taken some time off over the years and want to get back into it and they're looking to go out on, say, some public ground here in Iowa? What safety tips or advice would you pass along to them?
So for upland bird hunting in Iowa, whether it's pheasants or quail, you are required to wear an article of blaze orange, whether it's a hat, a vest, or a coat. We just want folks to be visible, and so where other people are. If you're hunting with a group, lay out the plan, how you're going to hunt a field. Everybody stick to that plan and just be aware of targets. Especially when a bird flushes, what's in the background. If you're using blockers and whatnot. And of course, if you're hunting on private land, obviously we always want people to get permission. It's a luxury to hunt on somebody's private land. So always seek out that permission. For folks that are new and maybe don't have access to any private land, we do have a lot of public land. And so what I encourage folks about that is, it does get a lot of activity, especially on the weekends. Our numbers and our harvest have been pretty good the last couple of years. So words got out. And we've been getting those comments about the number of hunters out there. So whether you're resident or non-resident, if you kind of want to maybe have a place more to yourself, maybe think about hunting midweek. rather than on Saturday or Sunday is a good tip. And generally, what I find bird hunting, obviously, if you got a dog, your success is going to be way better because they just as soon run and hide as flush. And so having a dog really helps you find the birds. And if you knock one down, they're also great about help retrieving the birds. And I've also generally found that the birds tend to hold better on calmer days. When we've got days when the winds are up there, over 12, 15 miles an hour, like I said, they'd rather run and hide. And when the grass is all rustling and everything, they can't hear as well and know where things are. And they're more prone to flush out of range. And so I generally have my best hunting success when we have, days where the wind's relatively calm at, I'd say under 12 miles an hour or so.
Also, a lot of people I've talked to that do a lot of pheasant hunting say it's also kind of, another benefit. You're walking in areas, maybe if you're a deer or turkey hunter, you wouldn't test those boundaries because of risk of spooking deer or something like that. So like basically you could almost, while you're hunting, be scouting areas that maybe you aren't used to and come across like a buck bedding area. And then you can mark it on your map or something for future hunts, kind of like some, cross game planning there. So while you're out walking and pheasant hunting with a group of people, you come across some good areas for other game.
Oh, I think definitely, especially if you're hunting CRP or pheasant areas that are, in some proximity to timber. You bring that up. It was opening weekend last week, and I've got a new puppy in, so she's just kind of learning the ropes, and we were hunting a CRP field, and boy, we must have jumped up a buck that was about a 150, 160 class. And the funny thing about it was I've jumped deer on it before, but nothing of that size. And I mean, definitely something I would have thrown an arrow at if it walked by me in the woods. And it was just out in CRP in the wide open farm country. And I'm like, that sucker's probably pretty smart, lying a fence line out here. And I bet you no deer hunters are going to bother him.
Yeah, they're smart, aren't they? They know where to go where the pressure isn't. So, Todd,
Yep.
hey, we'll wind this down here. Thanks for the time here today. How can the listener stay connected with the DNR?
You can just go to our website, www.iowadnr.gov /pheasant survey. If you want to see our roadside counts, we've got a page up there celebrating the 100th season, for Iowa. Actually, we're celebrating it from starting this season all the way through next season. So you want to look at the roadside reports, find out where pheasant numbers are good or just what your pheasant numbers are locally. All our information is there, the hunting regs, shooting hours, bag limits, all the information that people needs right there. We have an online hunting atlas too, if folks are looking for public land that you can bring up on your phone, and it'll follow you right along, shows you the boundaries and parking lots. And so a lot of good information right there.
Well, happy hunting and good luck to you, sir.
All right. You too. Thanks, Brent.
Again, that's Todd Bogenschutz with the Iowa DNR. We appreciate you joining us here on Outdoor Adventures. You can catch all of our episodes on the Brownfield Ag News YouTube channel and in audio form on the Agra America app. I'm Brent Barnett here on Brownfield. Thanks for listening and have a great day.